When we talk about surface area, we're going to be looking at the sum of all the faces that make up a given prism. Now, our first example is a regular prism given as length 10, width 8, height of 14. Now, no diagram is given to us, so our best bet is to first start by making a quick sketch of what we're looking at. Don't worry too much about the accuracy of your 3D drawings. Worry about making sure that you've conveyed the basics of what that picture should be. So, since it's a rectangular prism, I'll draw a rectangle on the front, and then I'll draw some vanishing lines like that. So that now creates my three-dimensional object, and I'll label it appropriately. A width of 8, a length of 10, and a height of 14. Now, the good news is, since I can take this prism and I can flip it around in space, the height, the width, and the length aren't nearly as important as how they relate to each other. So for example, if I take a standard rectangular prism that you guys are fairly familiar with, ignore the rounded edges, it doesn't matter if I say this is the height and this is the length, because I can do that. Now this is a very small height, there's my length. I can rotate it in space, the surface area doesn't change. Same thing applies here. Now, when we talk about surface area, we need to find the area of each of those individual faces, add them all up, and that will provide the total surface area for the object. In this case, I'm looking at 6 surfaces. Now, there are 2 basic schools of thought. One is to calculate each of the 6 spaces and add them all up. The second strategy is to think of that as having 3 total surfaces. We're going to focus on the first strategy first, work our way all the way through to get an answer, and then we'll compare it with the second strategy so you can pick which one works best for you. The third strategy is to simply apply a formula that fits for these kinds of prisms. I discourage memorizing formulas though, because it only makes the number of formulas you need to memorize that much greater. If you can understand what you're looking at, you don't need to worry about maybe forgetting a 2 or a 3 or a plus sign in that original formula. Now, when I do my inventory, I'm looking at a top, a bottom, a front, a back, a right, and a left. Those represent my 6 surfaces. Top and bottom, front and back, left, right. Now, because this is a rectangular prism, these surfaces are paired up so that they match. Let's start doing our inventory. The top, we know, is a rectangle. That's this piece up here. It is 8 by 10 because that's 8 and that's 10. So the top is 8 by 10, or 80. The bottom, similarly, is made up of the same basic dimensions. I'll write that a little bigger, make it a bit easier to read. So the top is 8 by 10, or 80. Bottom has the same dimensions, so it has the same area, also still 80. When I look at the very front of my figure, I'm looking at an object that is 8 by 14. Let's make that pop a little bit better. This surface, right there, is 8 by 14. It's 8 this way and it's 14 tall. I don't have my 14 times memorized, so we'll pop out my calculator and see what we've got. Let's see, 8 by 14 puts me at 112. Now, similarly, the back is the exact same shape. That's the one that's hidden in the back of my picture. So that's also going to be 8 by 14, which is 112. So that's going to be the back of my prism. Now I can talk about the left and the right, these 2 surfaces. And again, the strategy that we're employing here is to calculate every single face and add them all together. So now that means the left and the right. So the left is going to be, that's this side over here, it's 14 tall, 10 back. So it's 10 by 14, which is 140. So, and then the right, again, 10 by 14. I can see this side right here is my right. There's my right. The right has that same 10 by 14, which is 140. So now I've got all 6 of those surfaces are going to get added together to provide the total surface area of my object. So we can now run down the list. I do 80 plus 80, so that's the top and bottom, plus 112, plus another 112. That gets me down to the front and the back, and then I have to add in my left and right. So I add 140, and another 140. My final answer is 664 square feet. And I got to that answer simply by adding all 6 of these areas together. Surface area in general refers to the sum of all the areas of the various faces. And that's literally what I have done here. I've calculated out each of these pieces. Now, if you can look at these objects creatively, there's another strategy. If you understand this strategy, then go ahead and end this video and move on to your next example. But if you'd like to, stay with me another second. We'll take a look at another approach. Saves a little bit on the work if you can picture everything the right way. All right, now let's take a look at this exact same problem where we know what the answer is coming in and attempt it with a little bit different strategy. Now in our last example, we looked at this as a collection of 6 rectangles. I'm going to propose that we can look at it as the collection of just 3 rectangles. Specifically, I'm going to take the top rectangle off. That's that piece. Now that top rectangle, we know from what we decided before, is 8 wide, and it's 10 deep. The whole figure is 14 units tall. That was the way we had laid it out before. I'm going to stick with that layout again for consistency. So I'm going to take that top piece, pop it off. I'll draw it over there. It's a 3-dimensional figure, so it's still technically a rectangle. It's just disappearing back into the board. Now that's still 8 by 10, so it has an area 8 by 10. Now what I'm going to do, and that works out to be 80 square feet. Next, I'm going to take the bottom piece, and I'm going to pull it off the bottom. That's this piece right here. So there's that bottom part of my rectangular prism. I'm going to pull it off. So there it is, laying over there. And it's still 8 by 10. So 8 by 10 is still 80 square feet. That hasn't changed. My last piece I'm looking at now is this middle piece. What I'm going to do is lay it out flat. Now it's 14 high, so it's still 14 high. When I look at how long it is, each of those rectangles represents one of the sides as it's wrapped around. So basically I've cut the top off, I've cut the bottom off, then I've cut up one of these edges and laid it out flat. So now when I lay this out, I have 8, 10, 8, and 10. So if I were to fold it back up again, or as an example, if I take a piece of paper, so what's nice with this unit is you've got very easy manipulatives you can get your hands on. So I've got my rectangle here, my rectangular prism. I've cut off the top, pop, off it came, over there. The bottom, pop, off it came, it's over here. Now I'm going to take the middle part, the wraparound, and I'm going to lay it out flat into one big rectangle. So now I can go ahead. I've got this whole side then is going to be 36. That's 8 plus 10 plus 8 plus 10. Puts me at 36. So that means the area here is 14 times 36. And according to my calculator, 14 times 36 puts me at 504. So when I talk about the surface area for this object, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my top, which is 80, my wraparound piece, which is 504, and my base, which is 80, and add those all together. And I end up at 664 square feet. Now, a bit of terminology to be sure we're all on the same page. This wraparound piece is going to keep coming back in various units. We are going to have to deal with it when we do cylinders, so it's a little unavoidable, but at least when we're dealing with rectangular prisms and other kinds of prisms, we can kind of fake our way along. It's called the lateral surface. We're going to deal with that for sure when we do cylinders, but as a nice interim step, it can help us get through the prisms. Either way you want to do this problem is all right with me, and it will be with most instructors, as long as you're consistent and you show your work clearly and you set out the strategy you are going to apply. Every strategy we use, including just memorizing a formula, will get me that answer of 664 square feet.